Welcome everyone. We will now address the designing of a virtual workshop and how do you go about it. And again, today we have Dorina with us, our virtual producer at the SME Trade Academy. And I believe she tells me that between the period of May and November, she has done over 40 virtual workshops. So she has probably learned a lot more than many in a short space of time. And so let's benefit from her experience and let's learn the best way to go about this. Welcome again, Dorina.
Thank you, Sean.
Let's get going. So, what do you have to do differently in a virtual workshop when you are preparing compared to preparing for a face-to-face workshop?
I would start with allocating more time before running the workshop for planning, as there are additional steps involved. We have to design the activities, we have to think of how we would turn these activities to be delivered in a virtual space. And we also have to think of other issues such as the internet connectivity for participants, because that's not always the case. We also have to think, if the workshop, for instance, it's in more languages, we have to facilitate interpretation during the live sessions. We also have to allocate some time for translation of activities and so on and so forth. Then I would also say that when you're building the agenda, we have to do it in a different way. We, instead of thinking of time as you would if you would have a face-to-face workshop and you'd have to travel and you only have a limited number of days, for the virtual workshop, I would say focus more on the activities and the aim of the workshop and less of the amount of time. And that's because the virtual workshop, given that it can be done from your home or from wherever you are based, can be like spreaded over various sessions. And instead of thinking of days, maybe think about extending it to weeks or even months. It's also better for the participants too, because staying in the front of of your computer and going through one full day of activities and live sessions is more tiring than it would be in the face-to-face environment. Also, I would say that given the time is compressed and the live delivery is feels a bit more faster than in the face-to-face environment, scripting is a good idea to ensure that you stick to the points you want to get across and you don't miss any important information. In addition to this, I would also say that you need to think of some preparatory activities, like for or even actually an introductory call. And that's because of two reasons. If we have these preparatory activities, like, I don't know, a forum, a quiz, a video to be watched, and an introductory call, the participants will gain some familiarity with the topic covered on the one hand, and on the other hand, they would also gain familiarity with the platform and with the tools. So when the actual workshop would start, they would already know where to click and where to go to access the needed sessions. A last thing would be, instead of to think of the live delivery, of to make it more targeted and think about the time that you'll be used during the live delivery. I've read some research and some research articles and also saw it in these 40 workshops that you mentioned. That the shorter the live delivery and the more targeted discussions, the better. And that's because, again, it's quite hard to always be there and always be attentive to everything and capture everything that is being said. Because also participants are most likely staying at their home when they attend these workshops. And in this way, we make sure that our live delivery doesn't compete with other activities, like, I don't know, kids or other house chores.
Yeah.
So I would say a way to do this is like to have the PowerPoint presentations turned into videos that participants can watch before the live session.
That makes sense. And then if they want to then have a few highlight slides to bring out the salient points, then you at least know that you're speaking to people that have been through your whole presentation on a video. And it's very easy to produce these videos. You could even use Zoom and self-record your presentation. And they can watch that in their own time, and then they come prepared to the workshop. I like that idea. Whereas often in face-to-face workshops, trainers tend to use all the time. I mean, they have this very scarce time together with all the people attending the face-to-face workshop. They may have had to travel to be there. And then they go about using a few hours of the workshop presenting a PowerPoint deck. I find that a bit odd because it's a really bad use of time where you want to be with people, you want to be able to interact with them, and you should rather have them come to the workshop prepared and then start talking about the matters that do matter. So I like that idea very much on that. The other thought that comes through to me is people are attending the workshop, as you said, from home, which means they sort of can opt in or opt out. They have this. You have to keep them engaged. It's probably harder to keep people engaged in a virtual workshop than it is in a face-to-face workshop. So you've got to be aware that you are fighting against other distractions that they might be sitting with at home. As you said, they could have kids running around. So these are definitely challenges that you face in running a virtual workshop that you wouldn't face, say, in a face-to-face situation. Then my second question to you in the whole discussion of designing the workshop, what are the stages involved in organizing a virtual workshop?
There are quite a few. They involve both, as the workshop too, live discussions and also the design of the content, which can be done offline. So the first one would be the initial meeting, where that I would have with the facilitators and the organizers, where we set the scope and the aim of the workshop. Then the second one is completing the workshop form, where the facilitators would provide more details with regards to the workshop regarding dates, content, description of this workshop, which will also be found on the workshop page. The third one would be for the facilitators to send some resources to me. Either the ones that they have used in a face-to-face workshop, if they already delivered that workshop live, or some new materials that they just intended to use in this new virtual workshop. The fourth stage would be to have like another live session with me, which is a workshop design proposal meeting, where we zero in the activities after seeing the materials, and we go through the sessions of the workshop. The fifth one would be to finalize the agenda and provide the finalized content for the activities by the facilitators, and which will be then followed by me building the activities and setting up the workshop page according to the agreed days, sessions, and the content that was sent. Then we would have a dry run meeting to test all these activities. We would then have the running of the workshop and providing the certificates and the reports at the end of the event.
Great. Well, that's pretty thorough. In your experience of the many that you've done, in the process of planning for the workshop, where have you seen problems, or where have you had issues in the planning for the workshops?
I would say when it comes to designing the activities. And that's because a lot of the requests for workshops that I've seen involve a higher live sessions to a higher level as compared to the asynchronous activities. And that's because the live sessions are initially scheduled to take much longer time than uh, uh, than we would advise. And also that's also because partly because facilitators are not aware of the many asynchronous activities that we have in place. So, but once we have the discussion and once we go thoroughly through the activities and the content, then that gets sorted out.
Great. So then, I suppose this follows then is how long in advance would you say an organizer needs to start discussions around organizing a virtual workshop?
It all depends on the length and the content of the virtual workshop. I would say, as a rule of thumb, at least 1 month in advance of when you want to organize the workshop. And that's because we need to go through all the stages to make sure that the workshop will be a success. For instance, we did have some requests for workshops that uh, were planned to take place earlier than that. And after going into the detail of the planning, we then, the facilitators then realized that they would need to change the date and reschedule to make sure that everything is going to work out and the participants will really benefit of the workshop. But then, of course, it depends on the content, the type of exercise, the languages involved. If, for instance, we are now organizing some workshops in Russian, and given that I don't speak Russian and also the facilitators don't, then this requires more time because all the content has to go through the translators and then to be sent to us so that we can add it to the platform. So yeah, it all depends on the type of workshop. Also, I would say that when you prepare the workshop for the first time, yes, it does take longer than a face-to-face workshop. But once we run it for the first time and we have all the activities in place, running it the second, third, or fifth time, it takes almost close to no time on the facilitator side, unless they want to change, of course, the activities. It only takes some time on our side in terms of setup. But yeah, running it for multiple times, it doesn't take too much on the facilitator side. And that's a clear advantage. We, in fact, had this workshop, which we already ran for the 8th time.
So then on registering participants and the whole process of that, could you tell us a bit more about that process?
Yeah, so this process works in the following way. We send a CSV template to the facilitators, and they would have to fill it in with the details of the participants. And as long as we have their correct email address and all the other details, but especially the email address, I would stress on that, we finalize it and then we add it to the system. And soon after it's added to the system, the participants would receive an invite, an automatic invite that gets sent to their inbox with details such as login credentials, the link to join, and any other information that the facilitators want to include in this invite. Because we can edit it to add any information they want. And also, if the participants have any technical difficulties in accessing the platform after they have received this invite, we are there to support them. Like, they can either forget their password, or they might have already had an account on SME Trade Academy and they forgot about it. So we are there to provide all the technical support they need.
Great. So then, what happens if you realize during a workshop that some of the activities that you've planned and have already built don't achieve what they were supposed to do?
The activities are not set in stone. The workshop page is not set in stone. So we can actually adapt even during the workshop, before it starts, or yeah, even during the sessions. And we can add additional activities if we feel the participants might benefit of them. For instance, we had this case of a workshop where after one of the first sessions where we had the group activity, we realized that the participants don't really work together, and also they didn't really get what they were supposed to do. So what we were doing was, after each live session, we would have a meeting with the facilitator to discuss the following group sessions, so that we made to make sure the participants would be able to benefit and gain from the activity. So in this way, because also sometimes, the workshop doesn't only depend on the content or on the facilitator, but also it depends on, like, the success also depends on the participants and their familiarity with the subject. And then if we have like more complicated tasks as this one, which, by the way, the facilitator also said it's quite hard to deliver in a face-to-face workshop, then we can adapt the activities during the workshop.
Okay, great. After running the workshop, how long do you allow participants to have access to the workshop page?
As long as required. So this is up to the facilitators to tell us. We can leave it for as long as they want, and in this way, the participants can have access to the materials even after the workshop has concluded. We can also add the recordings of each live session, so that they can be accessed by the participants in case they missed any live session.
Great. I think that's pretty clear now. What we would like to talk about next, and we will do that in the next video, is I would like to find out from you what are the different tools that we can use in virtual workshopping to encourage engagement of participants and to achieve learning objectives. Thanks very much, Dorina.
Thank you.